defeat that? Are you aware of any
I'm
outside
not, because,
forces?
you know, I don't hang out with the opposition.
Okay.
I learned something from Phil Runkle in the school system. When you go out for a millage vote, you go for the yes votes. Forget the no votes. You're not going to change your minds anyway.
Right.
So you go after the yes votes, and that's what we focused on.
Good point.
Well, maybe looking at what was happening at the national level, since you already brought up the Rights Amendment march in D.C. If we look at some things happening at the national level around, particularly around LGBT issues, so if we look at maybe some watershed moments like Stonewall or the HIV/AIDS crisis of the 80s, when that kind of hit us all in many ways, to battles for around marriage equality or domestic partner benefits or
Don't ask,
don't ask, don't tell, all those kinds of things. I mean, what impact, if any, did those sort of national events or movements have at the local level, if any?
Well, I think it's just an evolution. And, we're making progress. It's just kind of slow coming. And, we only live so long. So I watch it as an observer. I'm not an activist in that way anymore because I'm mid-60s now. And I've got other things I want to do with my life. But I think it's on the right track
in different ways.
in different ways. I believe all of that will come. And I think that the retarding influence of the conservative culture is it's just so unnecessary, and it's for people who want to conserve, you are wasting all of this wonderful energy by suppressing it. So I find it just kind of difficult to get my head around, and I don't spin my wheels on it anymore. I just keep on doing what I do. But certainly, don't ask, don't tell is a big, reversing that is a big change for the military. And those big social, I think this is the civil rights issue of our time. And if you can't get it right between men and women, or between the genders, or between sex, or however you want to describe it, if you can't get this relationship right among people, you'll never have equality. So let's just focus on that.
I see it, it's interesting because what I see happening is all these peripheral issues are falling away. And they seem to be falling away because of a lot of work and a lot of groundwork and a lot of history. And it just seems like the hull is just becoming more and more aware. And the hull is inclusiveness, I think. And the hull includes all of us. And what I see happening, which is unlike my people are, we integrate in the community. Absolutely, we integrate. But when it comes to the roost and who's coming over to the house and where am I going, it really is a small group of lesbians and some women who are not lesbians and a couple of men here and there, because that's who I'm interested in and that's who I've made my deepest friendships with. And that's my history. And my history seems to be very strong, a big part of who I am and who my relationships are. Then I looked, for example, a couple weeks ago, I had an art opening, and all people came, a lot of different people came, straight and gay and men and women, and but it's different with the younger, with younger lesbians now and younger gay men. I'm seeing much more of an integration and much more of an embracing of one another. And I'm not saying I don't embrace that, but it just didn't happen in my history. And so right now, as I choose who I'm going to be with, I love being with a lot of different people. But it's different. And the women, the lesbians are dressing differently. and they're not wearing Birkenstocks so much anymore. I mean, they're wearing Birkenstocks, they all have Birkenstocks and Keens and so forth, but I mean, here my friends are with these giant spiked purple heels. I mean, really, and there wasn't just one, there were just a lot of just dressed. And this would not go on this beam. I love it. And I love people integrating and so forth, and I embrace that. I do. It doesn't happen to me so readily, but I'm ready. I'm ready for that. And I have friends, and I have artist colleagues, and I have people on the street I see who I really care for. But it's happening in a different way. And what about the gay marriage and don't ask, don't tell? Well, don't ask, don't tell, it's falling away. The gay marriage, people just don't give a damn anymore.
It's all about the benefits, that's all it's about. And
Well,
that's
there's
just
that whole
equality.
core issue of all the people who think it's gonna kill marriage.
No.
But it's just and the younger people the younger people who are coming up, they don't care. And the more it's on TV, and the more, I mean, we didn't have Modern Family when we were watching TV, when we grew up. It's just all of a sudden, it's part of life now. How can you say no to the life that's all around you?
And be who you are. That's the most important statement, I think. And I think the lesbian community has allowed, there's so much diversity within the lesbian community.
Yeah.
I mean, as much, the straight community, you've got this continuum, same thing with the lesbian community. So it's just being allowed to be who you are and worry about it.
Right.
We were saying when we first got started, it was a very core group that we were aware of, but it seemed like it was small.
But I think the lesbian community has always been aware of inclusiveness for all kinds of people.
Absolutely.
And I think
concerned about
that. And I don't know if that's because we have been excluded. For me, it isn't so much that as it is just this general sense of, everybody belongs. And I think the Michigan Women's Music Festival has always sort of put that message out, and you learn these things. And so you have a consciousness about helping gay men with AIDS. I remember we went through that.
Yeah.
African American people, Native American people. Everybody who's been sort of sidelined needs to be included. The gifts and talents of these people have to be included in our culture.
Yeah, and I think that for me, being a lesbian and being a teacher in the public schools, it really helped me become part of the diversity. And I don't think, my students didn't see me as a lesbian teacher because I didn't put myself out like that. But being already other helps me and helped me all my life as a teacher to be close, because I was other and I could understand other. And so it was easy to embrace the students and love all the students in a way that they felt included. And I was a great teacher.
You still are?
I still am a great teacher, but I had students who, my specialty was people who weren't in other schools or had been kicked out of all the schools or were differently able or didn't fit in for one reason or another. And boy, I just loved that job. And it worked. And I worked and they worked and we learned a lot
And
together.
the opportunity you allowed them because you included them and gave them 100% of you.
Yeah, it was
Tremendous.
good. It was great. It was fabulous.
I want to pick up on something you mentioned earlier, Carol, about that this is sort of the civil rights, movement or the issue of the day.
Yeah.
In that, one thing that's interesting about, I think, how, again, public perceptions around these issues, in the same way we say with the civil rights movement itself, or particularly the struggle of African Americans, there's a tendency to kind of box, African Americans, you kind of confine them, that the only thing they think about, they care about is race. And it seems like in many ways, whether it's because of sort of entertainment media today, or again, sort of this lack of understanding amongst, straight folks, it's a sort of kind of one you kind of limit people who identify themselves as LGBT or queer or however they self-identify, sort of limit them, like again, like that's the only thing they think about. Or even, you know, as the right might even say, the goal is to like get us all to be, you know, LGBT or Q or whatever, which is so, apart from it being insulting, but it again, it sort of, it limits how we see folks in terms of their whole being, in terms of what they do. And of course, I mean, I've known you for a long time in terms of the Herculean work you've done in the kind of Wealthy Street area and the work you've done as an educator and as an artist. I mean, you know, what do you think about just that dynamic that there's a tendency around people sort of limiting or pigeonholing folks around identity?
Well, it certainly happens, and if you live in a very homogeneous environment and you're only associating with people just like you, everybody else is the other. And if you have all the rights and benefits, you certainly don't think you want to share them with anybody else, or you're threatened somehow or another. I think by moving to my neighborhood, what it did is it exposed me to so many different people that everybody's the other. And so I think there's a lot of strength that comes from that. I can relate to a poor African-American man who's homeless on the street, on Wealthy Street, as easily as I can to Elaine. Because I've been exposed to him, I know what he isn't, and I know what he is. And so I think just that experience, I think where you live is a real political decision. Even though it might not be active in your consciousness, it wasn't in mine, I just landed there, almost by accident, but it's a statement. If you live in a very gated community somewhere, that says, I'm really sort of afraid of everybody else. I have had bricks thrown at me, I have been shot at, I have been broken into. I mean, I don't know what else you could do besides kill me at this point. But I'm not afraid. I don't live in fear. And I have friends, I speak to everybody on the street, and they know me. I've been picking up trash on that street for 30 years, so it's, it's real easy for me to be there.
Right.
But I'm also a very public person. I just believe in the common good. And I think that we have privatized so much of the world, privatized public services. I mean, the whole concept of public now means poor. It does not mean for everybody. And so you have kind of isolated the public. You have starved the public. I mean, everybody's scrambling. Nobody has any money. Why? All the wealth is in the private sector. And I think that's, you know, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And if you can't spread it out among everybody in a fair way, yes, everybody's going to rise and fall. But I'm just driven by that sense of public good. And if you do it for the public, you're doing it for yourself. If you're doing it just for yourself, you're not doing it for the public.
Any thoughts about that?
I think it's right on. I think Carol has led me in that direction, I would have to say. I mean, we all have contributed, but I think Carol, having contributed more to the public, and having, you probably don't think so, but I mean, with all of your initiatives, and now with the Tree Initiative, and with the Wealthy Theater, and with all of your buildings that, I mean, bringing Gaia out of the ice cream place it used to be, and lifting that one up, and one property at a time, lifting it up, and taking Heisinger's Hardware and making it into, which is now the Sparrows, and just taking these great buildings and making them beautiful again. And
It's fun, though.
It's
to
fun.
take something that's worn out and ugly and beat up and turning it into something that's beautiful.
It's your art
Everybody
form.
can.
It's your art form.
It's just fun. It's a discovery and it's fun.
We went on the way here, we drove down Eastern, and there are all these ash trees just thriving because they've all been treated, and that's because of Carol's efforts and Dottie's efforts, and to make sure that these trees live,
Mhm.
and that these trees are sequestering carbon monoxide out of the atmosphere. And they're just big and they're beautiful, and the city would have cut them all down.
Mhm.
There would have been nothing there.
Mhm.
And now Eastern's looking beautiful. So, yeah, I agree 100%.
It's good work.
It's good work. I hate seeing, I mean, having worked in the public schools, it's really sad to me to see anyone who can afford it sending their kids to private school. And the people who can't afford it are sending their kids to public school. And if we were integrated and we had as much energy going into all of the schools,
Mhm.
then we could rise everybody up.
Mhm.
But we can't keep it separated and equal. It doesn't work. I'm sad about
Yeah.
that.
I think and just more recently, I'm very much sort of, I was a public educator for many years, and then kind of a community development person for many years, and now I'm more into the environmental end because we have such an environmental crisis on our hands.
Mhm.
And I guess I think that preserving what we have, whether it be the built environment or the trees on our street, taking care of what we have is the greenest technology there is. The energy has already been spent. Do not take it all down and spend more energy creating something else. And so I think that's kind of what's driving me now, whether it be in the historic preservation movement or in the saving the trees movement, because they are the carbon dioxide suckers of the world. I think I just think preserving what we have is so much more important than building new. And I think even with our lead technology in buildings, they're missing sort of they're missing giving credit to trees that exist, vegetation that exists. So if you take out a whole grove of trees to put in semi-porous asphalt, how much further ahead are you? And every time you take a tree down, you're putting all that carbon that's stored right back into the atmosphere. But there's so much people don't know. And as a culture, we're kind of resistant to science and to what the real truth of things is, because we just want to believe what we believe. And so I always kind of rail the cage a little bit, but
Like cage riding.
but I'm an individual, I'm not
Right.
really a big movement person,
Sure.
and I'm not an institution person. I really am much more an independent operator.
Mhm.
And so I have a relatively closed environment in my neighborhood that I work in, but over time, the cumulative effect, I think, has made a big difference.
Absolutely. And in many ways, that's what this project is about, this sort of learning from the work that Howard Zinn did in his People's History of the United States, to sort of say that, the history that most of us are taught in schools is it tends to be a very one-sided perspective, and it leaves out so many people. Even in popular movements, we know about, Martin Luther King or Rosa Parks, but we don't know about the thousands of women who did the behind-the-scenes work, who organized meetings, who cooked food for meetings, who did all that stuff that is equally as important as somebody who gives great speeches, So that's kind of what we're trying to do here with that. So we're interested in sort of just it's not just people who are like on the front lines, like doing stuff, but just people who are doing what they felt is important and making a difference in their own ways, So I'm just wondering, if people might be watching this interview 20, 30, 40 years from now, hopefully they will. And speaking to kind of generations that would be watching that, or will be young, teenagers or college students then. Again, particularly around the issue of what you've been able to achieve in your own lifetimes. What kind of messages would you want to convey to them about what's important for them to keep moving in that trajectory of progress, of social change, of social justice? What might you want to say?
You're on.
I'd say start learning early. Continue learning your entire life. start making things early and keep on making them your entire life. Keep on connecting with people from the very beginning all the way through the end. And don't exclude anyone. And be involved in your community, be involved in your friendships, be involved in whatever work you choose to do, and do a hell of a job. Make it count. With whatever you do, make it count. Be excellent at what you do. Work really hard.
And do just a little bit more than you're expected to do. I remember I was a competitive swimmer for years. And if you do not do that extra lap, if you do not do a little bit, push yourself a little bit more, you never get better. So if you're taking care of your lawn and somebody else's lawn is lawn, mow it for them. Just extend yourself a little bit. All of that adds up over time, both in terms of your relationships with people, in terms of how things look. And it's just, extend yourself, engage yourself, and take care of the people you love. Put your own oxygen mask on first, because you can't help anybody else if you're not good and healthy yourself. So stay active, stay physically active. I mean, Elaine,
Absolutely.
I walk to Reed's Lake and back 5 times a week just to get that taken care of in the morning, and then I'm good the rest. So keep your body as pure as you can. What do you think?
Well, I mean, good, it's always good to put it back on the work. Well, I just wanted to ask if there was anything else that we haven't talked about that you felt like you wanted to say. Otherwise, I don't really have any other questions for both of you.
I want to bring up this, this is not necessarily a lesbian issue, but